as well, such as Brexit, and then the knock-on impacts of how this has all affected us. And I think what we want to get at today is how this has affected us as business leaders, founders, chief execs. You know, what's been the toll personally, or what have been the challenges, and how have you responded? I think that's where we want to take this discussion. And joining us on the panel today, Joel's going to guide us through the discussion with panelists Taran, Helen, Nick when he joins us, and Sandra. But we're going to invite your input as well, and get the conversation flowing. So feel free anytime you want to share thoughts or comments or questions that you want to explore through the chat, and I'll weave these in, and there'll be moments when we can invite you in and have your comments as well. So to start with, should we start with some just very brief introductions from Joel and our panelists, and then we'll start the conversation flowing. Should we start with you, Joel, and then Taran, Helen, and Sandra?
Fantastic. Well, absolutely wonderful to be here this afternoon with you all. You know, the energy has just been amazing so far, and let's keep this up in the group, really. But my name's Joel Blake. As a day job, I run a fintech company here in Birmingham. We supply portfolio risk software to the financial services industry. But my background is in social enterprises and creative sector businesses. So I started my first business when I was 21. I recruited my friends in my area, helped kids in schools through creative workshops and activities. So been on that side of the fence, and I'm a great passionate believer that creativity and inclusion are the key to success in any business, regardless of what sector that you're in. And I've had the pleasure of being supportive of yourselves in terms of the investment roundtables throughout the Scale Up program. So wonderful to be here today, but it's not about me. I really want to get into our panelists and to really start teasing out some great expertise from you as quick as possible. I'm going to go first to Helen, then I'm going to go to Taran, then I'm going to go to Sandra, and then I'll go to Nick if that's okay. So Helen, just literally quick, 30 seconds, 1 minute, who you are and what you do.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Helen, CEO of Totem Learning. We're a digital learning company, so we specialise in serious games, virtual reality, augmented reality, so anything digital and anything to do with learning, really. I'm a psychologist by training, and yeah, I've been using the power of games to bring learning to life for the past 20 years.
Fantastic, and it'd be good to hear how you've been using that over the last 12 months as well. We'll get into that for sure. If I could go to Taran.
Hi, my name is Taran. I run a company called Taran 3D. We're an immersive 3D design company, and yeah, I started left work to start the business 18 months ago, and before that I was working for an architectural company as a 3D artist.
Fantastic. And again, we'll definitely get into technology in this conversation. It seems to be a real strong theme right across the year for many businesses, particularly creative businesses. So we will get into that. Sandra, if I could come to you.
Hi, so I'm Sandra. I'm one of the founders of Hayes Collins Media. And if I tell you this morning that I was virtually blowing up a cruise liner in Croatia, you might get the idea that I have a bit of a specialism in helping people cope with crises. So we really aim to help people become confident communicators, and that could be through media interview training, it could be through presentation skills training, and if Taran does well today, we've been working with him, and or it could be through helping people get the infrastructure and architecture right to support that by being a great press officer or a great social media communicator.
Absolutely. I mean, communication is fundamental. It's the articulation of who you are, what you provide, the value you offer. So absolutely 100% important. And last and by certainly means not least, can I go to Nick, please? Sorry, Nick, you might just...
Okay, yep. Sorry, hi. Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm Chief Exec of Rural Media. Rural Media is based in Hereford. We are a slightly unusual company in the sense that the larger part of Rural Media is a charity. It's a not-for-profit. And then we have a production company, film, TV, video production company that's wholly owned. Any profits that the production company make covenants across to the charity. It becomes another income stream for the charity. We've on the production side, at the moment, we're doing quite a lot of work on issues that are arising from COVID. Certainly around some mental health issues, but also the rather dramatic rise in domestic abuse. So we're just finishing off a whole package of work there. And then we're also rounding out a program of work with BBC Arts called New Creatives. One or two people may have heard of that, delivering that right across the West and the East Midlands. And that's a talent development program for young artists, 16 to 30-year-olds, to get their first broadcast piece. That's both TV and audio, a little bit of immersive work in that as well.
That's brilliant, Nick. And you know, I could commend you on the work, particularly around kind of domestic abuse, and that's a very, very serious subject that I'm sure we've all have heard of and have been aware of throughout this whole lockdown period. Which does bring me on to, I guess, a starting point really for today's conversation, because whilst COVID-19 has been a very difficult period for all of us, and 2020, one would say, has been a year of change and disruption in many shapes and forms, more than any of us could have even imagined. As creatives and as entrepreneurs, in there lies, I would say, opportunity. In there lies the ability to refresh, maybe rejuvenate, maybe reset in some areas. But I think one of the things I'd like us to maybe get your views on and think about as we're going through this discussion is just to really start off by thinking about, how has this period affected you? And this isn't about being on ceremony and, you know, let's not get the Kleenex out and start wiping each other's eyes. But the reality is that we're all human beings and we've gone through a really challenging time. So how has that affected you? And what have you taken from the learnings of those challenges and that affection into your business? How have you transformed and used that learning in your business? So how have you felt over the last, 2020, last 12, 14 months, and how have you taken that learning into your business? That's really the question I like to ask. So feel free to just unmute yourself and let yourself go to speak, but I'd like to maybe go to one of the panelists first around that. Helen, I'll come back to you. Just what your thoughts are on that question so far.
Yeah, so I think at the very start, it was all a bit kind of novel, if I'm honest. So there was a little bit of excitement for our industry because we generally don't meet our clients. We never work with them face to face, so we're always remote. So we could see there was lots of opportunity. I think that was a really good word to use. But I think as it went on, it became a slog, didn't it? I mean, now I'm very tired. I think feeling like, it's been a year. It's been a very long, tough year. But I think reflecting back on it, the resilience that I've seen within my team, but within pretty much everyone I've worked with, to be able to cope with this unprecedented situation was just immense. Everyone had their own individual challenges. We're all in the same storm, but not in the same boat, as the saying goes. So I think that, the ability that everyone had to cope was just brilliant. And so, yeah, to be able to bring that into our businesses has been a huge lesson, because as an entrepreneur, you have to be resilient anyway, don't you? So, you've got to plan, but then you've got to execute that plan and see what happens. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's the resilience of people that's been one of the key lessons.
Yeah, I think, you're absolutely right. And I'm sure, a lot of nodding heads there where you were talking in terms of that sense of feeling tired. But it's in that tiredness where I guess you start to learn more about what it means to be resilient, what it means to be that survivor, what it means to keep going, the purpose for your business in the first place, and all of those things that we often hear about or read about, but it's only when you're going through it do you feel it. And I guess
on your core passion.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think it's how you utilize that and manifest that into actual actions itself. I mean, Sandra, if I could come to you, because I think in terms of the communication of how people are feeling and the value and the reality check of what's going on, how have you seen the ability for people to really communicate what value they're providing in these times?
That's a really interesting question. And I think listening there to Helen, I was reflecting on the fact that if you'd even asked me a year ago whether it would be possible to deliver training like this, I would have just scoffed and said, don't be silly. And in fact, what has been interesting is, and I think this will be different for all of us depending on where we're starting from, but what has been interesting is what has become possible, and how we've all managed to be more creative than we thought we were in how we can actually keep our businesses going, deliver them in a different way. And communication has been so key to all of that. And at one point, I actually found myself running a course just called How to Communicate on Zoom, because people were struggling so much to create those connections with people, and they were missing that human connection so much. And so we ended up starting to work with people and with companies to talk about how they could use and sort of create connection in a situation where we can only see this sort of tiny amount of people, and where there's so much possibility for miscommunication and for doing things like talking over each other or just feeling left out. And I think we've all been in those sort of situations. And in order for that not to happen here, it's probably a good idea that I stop talking now, otherwise nobody else will have a chance.
well, I'm going to come to all those who are on mute shortly to get their views, but I just want to give you all a chance as the panelists to really just give your view on a couple of things. And I think that communication point is really important. And I think, Taryn, I'd like to come to you in terms of the use of technology when it comes to communicating in these times. What have you seen in 2020 around the use of innovative technology to communicate to customers, stakeholders, or whomever?
Yeah, so we were only 6 months old when the lockdown hit, so it was quite a scary time. But we actually found there was an uptake in, uptake in clients asking for, technology solutions, online solutions, because they could no longer get the customer to the environment or the product to the customer. So we were able to do this kind of online. And so the technologies that we were kind of banging on about that nobody was bothered about, all of a sudden, everyone was really interested in. So that was great.
I think what's interesting there is that we all have value, but sometimes things need to happen for that value to be realized. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have this very driven passion about wanting to get our stuff out there. We've got the best thing off the block, best thing since sliced bread. Everyone needs it. But that doesn't mean to say that the opportunity is right for you to be able to share that at the value and at the level that it deserves. And it's about being prepared, and it's about being ready for when those opportunities come, even when, as Helen said earlier, you might feel tired or you just feel worn out. There's a reason why you started on this journey in the first place. But sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. And I think, I would like to come to Nick before I could come to the rest of the group, because Nick, you talked about, the work around domestic violence and I guess the challenges around that and some of the other areas of work that you're working in. I guess, what are your views on that when, you just don't feel you can break out of the situation that you're in? You're in this kind of locked in, whether it's physically or even mentally, spiritually, what have you. How have you seen that play out?
I think one of the things is, I think it's been touched on already, and Helen, you touched on as well. I mean, one of the things that I've learned really a lot is the value of having really good, strong colleagues, a senior team. We meet every week. The first two agenda items are how are our staff and how are we? And you just go through that. We've got putting in systems so that we've got a buddying system and so on. And I think about it, this year we've had 3 staff who've lost a parent. So there's been bereavements within the staff team. Now, had we been in real life, in an office, you would have had a chat, you would have had a coffee with them, what have you. All that's had to be negotiated remotely as well. so I think on that sort of looking after each other and the staff, we've learned a lot on that, and it's been really strong and actually really exciting, because it means that we can face some really challenging times and frustrations. You know, I mean, commissioners and funders have been uncertain, so contracts have dragged on. We haven't been able to conclude work when we thought we would have, all of that. So on the human side, it's been a real learning curve, a real journey, but I think a really good one overall. And then on the tech side, yes, staying in production, or, you know, learning and adapting to remote production. You know, that's everything from a director directing via Zoom who might be 50 miles away to the crew. All of that takes me back to my old community arts days, where I was taking out kit, dropping it off, giving guidance about lighting and sound and everything, and then going back and picking up that and the rushes, bringing it back, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah, the day-to-day journey too.
And I think also just some of the things we hear in the headlines. I mean, you know, on the on the sort of some of the work, domestic violence and other projects we work on, looking, you know, suddenly actors that are already in a relationship are very much in demand, so that we can do more intimate scenes and so on. You know, all of that has all been, you know, rushing into us, and we're having to adapt. But it's been good in a sense.
Well, I think that's the key word, and I'd like to open up to the rest of the group, you know, in terms of adaptation, and you know, we've all had to adapt, and one would argue that we're not out of the woods yet. We've still got further adaptation to do. We've still got a post-COVID world that we need to then build a sustainable business on the back of. So we're not out of the woods yet, but, you know, just generally to the whole group, you know, how have you adapted to this time that we've been through, and what are you doing to help set your foundation in a post-COVID world? And that's open to the whole group. So feel free to take yourself off mute and share your views. And if you do want to say something, just raise your hand. I can see who's in order. So
can I start, Joel, quickly? Yeah, I just want to say one thing. One thing that I've learned over the COVID lockdown is the fact that the importance of actually human connection, connecting with other people. Like, I used to think business was about like strategy and sort of, you know, products and price lists and things like that. And one thing I've realized is that it's actually more about connecting with people and making genuine relationships. And I found that has been really kind of quite special, you know, over the lockdown, that I've made so many friends, more friends now than I actually did in the past. So yeah, I think that human connection with other people, understanding what their requirements are and what they're trying to do, and then coming on board with them with that, you know, having that sort of empathy and compassion to kind of understand that and get on board with their projects has been, you know, I've learned that, you know, through the people that I've met, and, you know, the connections that I've made as well on the Scale Up program.
Yeah, I mean, John's put in the chat, you know, how important has been connection to you during this time. I think it's been absolutely fundamental. You know, even as I reflect on my own circumstances and business, it's about understanding and reaffirming that business is about people first. You know, it's easy to get sucked into this kind of mentality that it's all about, as you say, Taryn, the strategy and the lists and everything. It's about people, and creative industries provide one of the greatest bridges between people, because you're tapping into people's imagination, you're tapping into people's emotion, you're tapping into people's energy in its truest sense. And so it's how are you using creativity to really do that and do that well. You know, I think we've all got the opportunity to really drive that forward now, because we've learned how we can get through these times. We've learned how to be as resilient as we can, but we're still here. And let's not forget, we are still here. Many are not, you know, and we have to be grateful and humbled about that. Sorry, John.
Can I chip in, actually, because it's a really interesting point. We've identified, what we've talked about is there's been a real big need, hasn't there, for much greater empathy and understanding and connecting at human levels. And at the same time, social distancing and the fact that we're having to use these tools like Zoom that are not the discipline for business to business communication, but not making that personal connection. Has anyone had any insights or moments or new things that they've learned about how to do this in such a challenging set of circumstances? I'll share one. I'll share one example, and it's something I did. I took a kind of business mentoring relationship and I totally transformed it and said, well, no, we're not going to do coaching or mentoring. What we're going to do is we're going to have tea, and we're going to sit in a different space at a different time. And I want to hear all about, what tea blend you're using, and show me your, and we talk about tea and teapots and tea mugs and stories around those, and just share the whole new aspect of our personal lives, just by changing the scenery and changing the conversation and making a personal connection.
Certainly seen more into, you're not just a team member who comes to the office and that's how you present yourself. You see into people's homes and see their kids, their pets, their partners, and all. I think that's all gone to make the connections we have at work more human. And even so, that's within our team. When we're talking to clients, so for example, in our banking sector, they turn up in hoodies in a tiny little cupboard office, and it definitely breaks down some of the assumptions that you make about people, doesn't it? And the kind of the view that you might have that they present themselves in their suit and tie or whatever, and then how they are on Zoom. It just seems to be a very different presentation. So I think absolutely agree. It's made, I think, the whole connection much more human, and therefore it's more relatable. It's easier to have those conversations.
I mean, Kate made a really great point in the chat there where she's talked about, meeting business people as friends, and their circle's way too small with other entrepreneurs before. By having that human connection, you open yourself to a wider network. So, really great point. Sorry, Tanya, I cut in as you're about to speak there.
Oh, no, yeah. I was just going to chime in on the whole resilience. Talking about resilience, I've always kind of thought that I was, quite a resilient person anyway, but with the whole 2020 situation, I found like a whole new superpower that I just literally did not know I had, because of having to kind of I think my main skills in business came from how I managed my family. That's going to sound ridiculous, but that's the kind of food, that's the kind of insight that I brought into my business, because at some points I was just like, I've got to stop. I cannot control everything that's happening. It's going like this, and I've got to stop, look, and listen. I know that's an old thing that we used to do when we was little kids, if you're as old as I am. But the point I'm trying to make is that I found wings, supernatural wings, that I did not know I had within that period. That is no lie. And just being able, just saying what everybody else is saying as well, just being able to really connect in with businesses, or even just being on this showcase, when you see the sea of creative people and the level, I mean, I never ever think that I'm of that level. And then when I look around, I'm like, wow, I'm with these people on the same level. We're all basking in this great creativity together. So actually, it feels to me that, yes, we've become even like a different, dare I say it, a new strand of resilience. You know what I mean? The virus is mutating. Well, our resilience mutated into something different. Do you get what I'm saying? And I just want to say that little bit on resilience for me in particular, and really learning new ways of working, a bit like what John said. Really learning that new way of working and working via the screen. I'm a very meeting people hands-on, and that wasn't happening. So anyway, I'll shut up.
No, not at all. I absolutely love that. And I think, I think we've all got those superpowers, because as I say, we're here and we're all learning, and we're learning in different ways, and we're all growing in different ways. But You are part of a fantastic network of people who are all like-minded and think the same. You know, it was mentioned earlier that, you know, it's a pause, it's not an end. So it's time for you all now to double down on these relationships and develop more superpowers together, because you're part of a cohort of individuals who have gone through this together, and you still got a journey to go, and you can do it together. And it's absolutely amazing. And what you really kind of pulled out for me there, Tanya, is this sense of embracing of diversity in its broadest sense. It's diversity of skills, of knowledge, of awareness, of understanding, of self, you know.
100%, Joel, 100%.
But my challenge would be to all of you is then how are you going to manifest all of this wonderful loveliness into practical growth? Because ultimately we can get all nice about it, but it's still going to be very challenging in continuing to grow your business through this period and beyond. But what you now have is the ability to be able to do that from a strong foundation, more than ever before, even in the worst of challenging times. So you can make that happen.
And I just wanted to say one last little bit of nugget, is that, you know, when I was talking about taking the skills as a mother and managing my family, you know, that the thing that I took that helped me in terms of what you were just saying, how are you going to make it happen? How is it going to be tangible? It's, from what I recognize, it is literally step by step, no guilt, no heavy burden, just step by step. If you cannot get, I mean, I've made so many great connections, and then at some point it was so overwhelming, I had to just step back and then take it step by step and nurture each step, make sure it counts, make sure that is developed to where it needs to be, and then take the next step. But that's what I had to learn because of my big, busy family, you know, so.
No, absolutely fundamental, bit by bit. Nick, go ahead.
I think that's really interesting as well. I was just as we were talking, I was just thinking that all this familiarity with and use of Zoom, and what we were saying about the informality. I mean, I was talking to a senior county councillor the other day. I didn't know her very well, and suddenly a bird came and landed on her shoulder, and she didn't budge, you know. And I was kind of, but then what I'm thinking is then that one of the things I'm going to have to work at is I might have 5 Zooms in a day with people, sometimes in London or in Birmingham, whereas before this, I would have probably arranged a meeting, gone up to London, had that meeting. So there would have been, now I think I'm going to have to manage that connectivity in a different way. Yeah, because in order to follow them up and to get those partnerships to really work, they're much more intense now, rather than, you know, I mean, if we were to meet wherever, you know, I was to meet with any one of you, you know, you would either come to Hereford, that would be great, or I would get it would be a big deal. Whereas now we might have a Zoom, come up with some ideas, and then you have to do the work to follow that up. And
I think that's a really, really powerful point, actually, and just because we've talked about, and just as I'm beginning to sum up, we've talked about feeling tired, we've talked about communicating, we've talked about opportunities, the timing of those opportunities, and we've talked about the networks to be able to execute on them. The practical reality is that this period has given us learning that we should put into our day-to-day.
Yes.
And utilize the advantages that we've got from this time in the best way possible. We can't have gone through this time and discount it and write it off and say, that's 2020, okay, fair enough, let's move forward.
No.
It's how do we blend that learning from 2020 to inform our future moving forward? Yeah. And that's something that's gonna have to be an individual process for each one of you as business owners.
Yeah.
But again, part of the community. Sorry, go ahead, Fiona.
I was going to say, John, if I can jump in there, I know David Tomlin's on this as well. So the new program that we're looking to run with GBA funding is actually about that. So it's a COVID response program for creative businesses. So that's really, if anyone here has got any ideas or suggestions about what we could some of the learnings obviously from this program. What I was really keen to do is take those learnings, take some of those great connections, take some of that great infrastructure from this program and look to see if we can embed that in the new program, but obviously, you know, just responsive and realistic with what's happened in 2020. So if anyone's got any ideas or suggestions for that, happy to chat about this offline as well, by the way. Please do have a chat with me. I'm also, as well as some workshops, I'm looking to run some masterclasses. So I'm looking to run some key masterclasses for creative businesses on some of those learnings and ideas that we can take forward for other creative businesses that haven't benefited from our program. So yeah, please do keep in touch with me and let me know if you've got any thoughts.
Well, look, we've got about 20 seconds left before we go back to the main room. So for me, this whole conversation can be summed up in one word, and that's connection. I think 2020 has given an opportunity to connect back with ourselves, to connect with each other, to connect with our futures. And it's about the action that we can now build upon and take forward in order to make those connections really, really work. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and wish you all the best of luck.